So that's an individual oil field. Where are we worldwide? Well, the next slide here shows a map of the world with world oil production or extraction from 1965 up to 2005, and this data comes from British Petroleum. One of the interesting things you see is that in 1965, the United States was the world's biggest oil producer. As we go through the years, you see that in 1970, the U.S. peaked in oil production. They have never produced as much oil per day as they did back in 1970. In Canada, we peaked in conventional oil production in 1974. In 1975, the North Sea opened, and Britain and Norway became oil-producing nations. In 1976, Mexico started to become a major oil producer when there were offshore discoveries in Mexico. As we go through into the 80s, we have the breakup of the USSR. Russia was a very big oil producer as well, and continues to be. Although, one of the things you'll notice with the Russian graph is that it goes up and down a lot. Political events have an effect on what countries are producing in terms of oil. In 1999, the UK North Sea oil peaked. It started into decline. And in 2001, Norway North Sea oil started to peak. This is actually very important for us in eastern Canada because we used to get much of our oil from the North Sea. And finally, we end up in 2005. In 2005, 33 of the oil-producing regions around the world were past peak. Some of them significantly. If you look at the United States here, you can see it's significantly off its peak production. Now, as I say, there are different factors. There are geological factors, there are economic factors, there are political factors. But if you think about what country in the world would be the most favorable to invest, the most favorable to put extra effort in to extract oil, it's got to be the United States. If it's declining, it's because of the geological factors. I'm going to run this quickly one more time, this time with oil consumption added. So the red bars are the oil consumption. Even back in the 1960s, although the U.S. was the world's biggest oil producer, it was also the world's biggest oil consumer. In 1973, the Arabs put an oil embargo on, which did affect prices and demand. In fact, prices tripled. It affected demand worldwide to some extent. In 1980s, the Iran-Iraq war started, and OPEC became very powerful and started cutting production. The U.S. also started doing some significant fuel-saving measures, and there was a drop in the early 80s in U.S. consumption. In 81, the UK became a net oil exporter. So the rise of the UK in the last couple of decades, I would argue, is in large part because they're an oil-producing country. As we go through into the late 80s, into the 90s, oil became cheaper again, U.S. consumption went up again. In 1993 was the year that the U.S. started importing more oil than they were producing. And finally we get up to 2005, and the UK has just started to become a net oil importer again. So that gives you an idea of the worldwide situation. Now, initially with the issue of peak oil,